have 20 years. I'm a real estate broker licensed in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I have 20 years REO experience. I've worked for big real estate companies. I've worked for little real estate companies. Currently, I work for Redfin Corporation. I've been with Redfin since 2014. I opened the New Jersey market for them. I opened the traditional market. I came to Redfin with REO experience. Redfin is not a company that really was jumped into REO, so I kind of just did it in my market quietly. I built the New Jersey market up for the next couple of years, and then in 2017, Fannie Mae approached Redfin to partner with their REO properties to help them save money. For those of you, I don't know how many people know who Redfin is, but we are a full-service brokerage that's countrywide. So now I run their REO division. I built it from the bottom up. We've been working with Fannie Mae since 2017. We started a pilot program. And because Redfin we're a tech company, so we have a lot to offer when it comes to saving money and streamlining processes. So that is why Fannie Mae came to us because, as you know, when you do REO properties across the country, Fannie Mae had 3,500 different agents working on their REO properties. And if Fannie Mae wanted to change one thing, I mean, this goes for any institution. If they want to change one thing internally, they have to roll it out to 3,500 different agents. Well, with Redfin, I'm a single point of contact, and we're a tech company. Everything's done the same countrywide across the platform because we have systems built in, and so it streamlines the process, and we can charge less. Currently, we're running the REO in New Jersey, Illinois, and Florida. We were supposed to expand in March, but as you can imagine, with COVID hitting, it's changed the industry. I mean, the traditional side of real estate seems to be booming. The REO side is kind of on hold right now with the foreclosure moratorium. It keeps getting pushed out. It's supposed to be lifted on 8/31. However, it looks like it's probably going to push through the end of the year. So there's been a huge shortage in properties coming through, as I'm sure you've noticed. One thing that makes Redfin different is our agents are employees of the company. So when we work with institutions who are trying to dispose of their assets, we can control an agent's performance as opposed to a 1099 contractor. So this has been a draw with a lot of the institutions that have reached out to us to partner. Performance and good service is hard to find in the REO industry because you have all these contractors with no kind of structure or standardization. So basically, is this group seasoned investors, or do I have all different types of grade of people in this conversation? Are you there, Daniel?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Is this group a seasoned group of investors, or do I have a wide variety of
There's a wide variety of people here. Quite a number are seasoned, okay. But we also have beginners.
Okay. So just want to back up a little bit and talk about the whole REO business. From an agent side, Redfin handles from acceptance of the assignment all the way through disposition of the property. So in an agent's perspective, we get the assignment, we have to verify the occupancy and determine whether if it's occupied or vacant. If it's vacant, then we can move to the next level. But if it's occupied, that becomes a whole nother story. So if it's occupied, there's two types of ways it can be occupied. It can be occupied by a person, or it can be occupied by personal property. So either way, if the personal property is more than $500, you can't trash it out. You have to go through an eviction process, or try to track down the prior owner and have them sign a release so you can trash out all the interior content. If there's a person that's living in the property, you can offer cash for keys to remove them from the property. And there's some pretty hefty cash for keys amounts going out to these occupants to remove them from the property. I don't know how many people buy properties off of auction platforms, but usually when you're buying it off an auction platform, a lot of times the properties are occupied. And if you buy the property off the auction, it comes with the occupant or the personal property in it, and that means that you as the buyer / new owner will need to do the eviction or cash for keys to either get the person out or go through the eviction process so you can actually trash out the property. In today's day and age, with the COVID, there's a lot of people who are just kind of waiting it out right now, and because the moratorium has been extended, they're just kind of riding the wave. We've had people who have accepted the cash for keys but can't find anywhere to go because of COVID, or they're pushing their dates out to see what happens with the evictions. So that can be a little bit stressful, and it's probably something that you want to be mindful of if you're bidding on an auction property. And you'll know when you go on the auction platform on auction.com or Zome or whatever auction platform you're on, it'll say, you know, a lot of times the property's occupied, do not approach the occupant. So when you see that, you know that it is occupied, and you're going to have to deal with some kind of eviction or cash for keys situation to try to remove them after you take ownership. So after the property is vacant, it needs to be rekeyed, and then we start what we call the valuation process. And that encompasses on the agent side of doing a BPO, which is a broker price opinion. It's also the same as a CMA, which is a comparative market analysis. Once you do the BPO, you submit it to the bank, and they review it, looking to determine what the value of the property and whether they should renovate it. There are several different ways of moving forward. There are institutions that do not renovate properties at all. They take them and they just flip them over. There are institutions that, like Fannie Mae, who is now fixing up 40% of their properties. Fannie Mae years ago used to just take the properties and turn them over and list them right on the market with no repairs. Now they've backed up a little bit to kind of look at the entire picture and see, if we put X amount of money in here, is there a good return on it? And there are properties where Fannie Mae's dumping $70,000, $80,000 in the property and listing it on the market renovated. So if you've been purchasing REO properties for a while, you're probably seeing a decrease in inventory because institutions are currently renovating and flipping their own properties, and because the moratorium and the lack of inventory right now. One thing that Redfin does as an agent, because we're a tech company, we try to utilize all platforms and work with the client as closely as possible to maximize the value. We do 3D scans on all our properties. They're also known as Matterport scans. So when we do a BPO on a property, we order a 3D scan, and that scan assists not only the agent, but the
Hello, I think somebody muted our speaker.
So the Matterport is a 3D walkthrough, so you can actually walk through the property. You can look at the interior, and the asset manager who is somewhere not near the property can actually virtually walk through it and look at the repair suggestions that you've sent to them and determine whether those repairs would be applicable to the property, if the ROI would be worth it. Should we continue to repair this property? Do we do a full repair? Do we do a partial repair? Because there are institutions that they'll do partial repairs. Their first priority is to get the property lender ready. So they'll do a roof inspection, a plumbing inspection, an HVAC inspection, and an electrical inspection. Those are the 4 points, and that includes, like, if it has septic, they'll do septic. If we think there's an underground oil tank, they'll do a sweep. If there's a well, we'll do a well inspection, because we want to make sure that the major systems are okay before they consider any renovations. And if they have money that they can put into it, they want to make sure that the major systems are addressed before putting it on the market if they're going to sell it as is, because then that allows a buyer to get a loan on it. And if you don't want to do a 203K loan to fix it up, you could possibly get a conventional loan on the property. So
hey, Gina, we're starting to get some good questions. Do you want to take them as you go, or would you like to hold them all to the end?
Sure. I'm at a good breaking point where I can take questions, and then we can move on to the next.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's start with the top questions here. And also, if you want to just chime in, go ahead and do so. Take yourself off mute and go ahead and ask your question. But we'll start with, does Gina/Redfin have an inventory of non-MLS, non-public auctioned properties, or is she providing traditional broker services only?
Right now, we just have traditional, all the listings go on the MLS. We have no off-market listings right now. We are in expansion and talks with other institutions, so in the next couple of months, that will probably change. But right now, all the inventory goes onto the MLS.
All right. Alex is asking, did she say what a BPO was? What is a BPO?
A BPO is a broker price opinion. That is where you take 3 active comps and 3 sold comps preferably within the last 6 months they sold, and within a mile or less of the subject property. You take those and you determine, using those comps and the condition of the current subject property with adjustments, you determine what a partially as-is price would be, what a partially repaired price would be, and what a fully repaired price would be. And in the BPO, you also include the items that you would address in repair for partial and full repair.
All right. Abby Shaw is asking, he's wondering if there has been an uptick in foreclosures and or REOs due to the current, I'm assuming, COVID situation. If so, how much of an increase has been observed? And a follow-up question, somebody had a question about how do we evict people if our county currently or our state currently has a moratorium on it?
Okay, so I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Sorry, the first one, has there been an uptick of foreclosures and REOs?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so right now there's not an uptick of foreclosures. It's actually with the moratorium, there is a major decrease in REO properties because no one can move them forward in the pipeline unless you're a private lender. The moratorium does not pertain to private lenders. So, you know, like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all the big, Bank of America, all the big institutions, their REOs are just kind of on hold and they're stuck in the system. They can't move them forward. So there's a definite decrease right now, but I would say in the next 12 months, we're going to start to see short sales popping up more commonly because that's the predecessor to REO properties. And then in the next 18 to 24 months is when the REOs are really going to start to kick in. We will, once the moratorium's lifted, it will pick up and the REOs will start back where they were. But right now, the people that are affected by COVID that will go into foreclosure due to the COVID, not the people that were going into foreclosure prior to COVID, but the people that were forced into foreclosure due to COVID, it'll take at least 18 months to get that property foreclosed and moving forward. So that's why you'll see short sales first, because the short sale, the owner can try to sell the property before they go into foreclosure. And I don't know, let me just clarify for a second, because a lot of people don't know the difference between a short sale and a foreclosure. So I just want to quickly review. A short sale is a property where the owner still owns the property, and if they sell the property, they're going to short the bank on the mortgage. So if they owe $300,000 on the mortgage and they sell the property for $275,000, they'd be shorting the bank $25,000 because they don't have enough money to pay off the loan amount. So that's a short sale. The difference between a short sale and a foreclosure is the bank has already foreclosed on the owner and they have taken the property back, and the bank is the actual owner of the property. So a lot of times it's much easier to close on a foreclosure than it is on a short sale, because a short sale you have to do a little bit of back and forth between the owner and the bank, and with a foreclosure you're just going directly to the bank. Are there any questions on the difference between the two?
There were a couple of questions in the chat box also on what exactly an REO is and how do you define that?
Okay, REO stands for real estate owned. It is a property that was had a mortgage on it, and the owner could not. They defaulted on their mortgage, and the bank actually filed suit against them to take the asset back due to they had a note on it, their mortgage, and because they defaulted, the bank filed suit, and then they take the property back, and it goes into their inventory, and the bank is the owner at that point. And it affects when you get foreclosed. So another difference between short sale and foreclosure: when you do a short sale, it does affect your credit, but it does not affect it as much as a foreclosure. A foreclosure it takes a little bit longer to recover from a foreclosure on your credit than it does on a short sale. So if you're investors and there are some short sales out there, you should look at them and try to pick them up they're probably in decent condition if people are living in them, although not always. But you might be able to pick them up and you know, get a good deal with the bank and be able to maybe even turn them over or, you know, put a tenant in them. But you have to remember that just because a property is a short sale or a foreclosure, it doesn't mean that the bank is going to discount the property majorly. The bank is looking to get a fair market value for the condition of the property. So just remember that. I mean, there are properties that we list that people come in 100,000 under asking, and it just, the bank is just not willing to negotiate like that, at least in the beginning.
Caitlin is asking about the process of making a 3D model for these homes. I don't know how much you know about the process, but can you speak to anything you do know about it?
Are you referring to the 3D scan?
Yes.
So the Matterport, so we have, Redfin has our own Matterport cameras. You can hire a photographer, or there's people out there that do Matterports. They're quite expensive if you order them on a property. The cameras, when we bought the cameras, they were like $5,000 each. We have a bunch in each market across the country, and you have to be trained in it. It's a pretty big, like, box camera with an iPad, and you have to be trained on. You walk through the property, and it scans the property and takes pictures and creates a 3D model.
All right.
I don't know if I can send a link to you, Daniel, if you want to share it with everybody after this is over, or.
Sure. There are a lot of people that would probably be interested in it.
Okay.
All right. Sunil is asking, and this is our last question. Oh, there's two questions. Feel free to put more in the chat if you have them. But and Gina, if you want to go on with your presentation, feel free to take the questions at a later point too. We can defer them. Just
Okay.
let me know. So Sunil is asking, does the bank have to evict the resident before they do auction on foreclosed properties?
No. So the reason the bank does the auction is because there is an occupant or a personal property in there, and usually what happens is the bank puts the property on the auction platform while they are waiting for the eviction date to arrive. And if they sell it on the auction platform, then that buyer will have to continue through with the eviction. If it is not sold on the auction platform by the eviction date, then the bank will go through with the eviction, and then they'll determine whether to fix or flip the property at that time. One thing I wanted to, I forgot to answer the question about if there's the state or the town has the evictions on hold. Right now, everybody has evictions on hold until 8/31. Congress hasn't ruled on the bill that Trump proposed for the moratorium extension. So, and there's no dates associated with it yet, so I don't really know what's going on 100% with that. But until that moratorium is lifted, evictions are all going to be on hold. Now, I know that there's a lot of people that have filed to start the eviction process because they were under the impression that it was going to be lifted on 8/31, and it could be lifted. It could. I'm not really sure what the bill is going to entail, so we're just going to have to ride it out and see, what happens with that. I'm sure we'll know something in the next 5 to 7 days.
All right, and then one last question here. I've got a softball question for you for Redfin. The question is, I've seen Redfin agents' commissions are significantly lower than others. How does Redfin manage that?
Okay, I just in the conversation I added a 3D scan link, so if anybody wants, you can copy the link and throw it in your browser and look at it whenever. So Redfin is we're a traditional brokerage. On the traditional side of the brokerage, we charge 1.5% list fee and then give 2.5% or 3%, whatever the seller decides, to the buyer's agent. So if you're giving 2.5% out to a buyer's agent, you're paying a total of 4%, 1.5% on the list side, and 2.5% to the buyer's agent. And if we have a buyer that comes in unrepresented, then we charge 1.5% on the list side, and we charge an extra just 1% to handle the unrepresented buyer. So it would be a total of 2.5%. We're not a discount brokerage. We do not cut corners, but we do not have to charge 5 or 6% commission because we're a tech company and we have a lot of the procedures streamlined, and we're consistent across the country. So we have a whole system set in place. Now on the REO side, if we're working with institutions and taking on hundreds of properties and managing them, if we're managing the properties, the REO properties, such as, verification of occupancy to cash for keys to renovations through disposition, then we charge a 2% commission on the list side because we have to do a lot of additional work and monitor renovations and all those types of things. And then we pay whatever the owner wants to the buyer's agent, 2.5% or 3% to the buyer's agent. There is a minimum at Redfin. Each market has a minimum, so it would be like 1.5% with a $3,000 minimum. So there is a minimum in each market. It's around $3,000. Any questions? Multifamily investments. I could see the speed coming up now. Multifamily investments are always great. You can live in one side and rent the other. You just have to make sure that, with any investment, if it's your first or second investment, you always have to make sure that you have a padding. If you have a tenant that gets in there and then they can't pay their mortgage, look at everything that's going on, or can't pay their rent every month. Look at everything that's going on with COVID. With landlords who are going months without rental payments, you want to make sure that you can handle you have some reserves if you have tenants in there that all of a sudden can't pay or leave in the middle of the night type thing. But multifamily investments are great. Redfin doesn't do commercial. We only do residential. So a lot of our properties are single family. Although with the REO, we do get multifamily in, and a lot of those need to be our reno properties.
What's the difference between commercial and residential multifamily?
Well, commercial is more like apartment building style. Residential would be more like a 2 to 4 unit, and then after that, after above 4 units, you get into classified as commercial.
All right. So far, we're all caught up on the questions, and so we can let you go for a little while, and we'll let the questions queue up and take them in a few minutes.
Okay. So next thing I wanted to talk about was there's different types of properties when you're buying REOs, and just kind of want to educate you on the different properties. One, we talked about auction properties, which are on auction platforms. It can be on the auction platform, and it can be listed in the MLS at the same time. Usually auction properties, you cannot go inside and because they're occupied or have personal property. Then there's just traditional REO properties where it's a property where they just either renovate it or they get it and they just turn it over and put it on the market and sell it as is. And then there are properties that are HECM properties. That's HECM. And HECM is a reverse mortgage property. And when, if you're looking at an REO property and you see the language that said, if you see language that says this property has to follow HUD guidelines, that means it's a HECM property. And the reverse mortgage properties have to follow the HUD guidelines, which means when the property's listed, there is a 6-month marketing period. And in the first 6 months, any offer that is submitted that is less than the list price is automatically rejected. On HUD homes, on the HECM properties, the reverse mortgage, you're not allowed to take anything less than the list price on that property for the first 6 months. So if you're looking at a house on HomePass or whatever site and you see must follow HUD guidelines, you know that if you come in under the list price, your offer is automatically going to get rejected. The other thing with HECM properties are they're always sold as is. In the first 6 months, they don't do any repairs, and they do not turn the utilities on. So if you buy a HECM property and you want to do inspections, you can turn the utilities on for inspections. You have to put the utilities in your own name, but the institution will not turn the utilities on. Or Fannie Mae doesn't turn any utilities on for HECM properties. The only time there may be electric on is if there's a dehumidifier or a sump pump that has to be running, and then there's electric turned on, but that's it. And then there are properties that come in. We get property assignments from Fannie Mae, and they are offered out to what they call neighborhood stabilization companies prior to going on the market. So they have to fall into certain category by Fannie Mae guidelines, and if this property falls into that category, they will offer this property out to NSI, which is neighborhood stabilization investors. And these are people that have gone through certain training or programs, and they use public money to fix up the properties and stabilize neighborhoods. So NSI properties, as we call them, stands for Neighborhood Stabilization Initiative, are what you consider, I guess, off-market properties, but they are offered off-market by the institution, not by the agent it's assigned to. And if nobody buys it in the first 10 days of that off-market period, then it goes through the normal channels of, do we fix it up? Do we just put it on the market as is? So it kind of gives you a little bit of idea of, properties and inspections. I would always, unless you're a really seasoned investor, I would always tell you to have an inspection on a property if you have the opportunity, because you just never know. There could be structural issues that you can't see. Any questions? I see there's questions coming up. Do you want me to keep going, or?
It's up to you. You can take the questions now. I can read them off to you if you like.
Sure. We'll do some questions.
Okay. So there was a couple of people that were asking about Fannie Mae's recent decision to charge 50 basis points more for their loans. Do you have any comments about that?
Well, I work really closely with Fannie Mae. I have a call with them every Friday. And so they just passed this. I believe it's only on refi. Is that, I have to go back and look, but I think it's when for refinances, they're going to charge 0.5 basis points. I mean, you have to figure the institutions are carrying all these properties that they can't move forward through their foreclosure, right? They've got all these assets on their books. They've got to make the money up somehow. So they've decided, I guess, to charge, 0.5 basis points to that's either going to force people to yes, move forward with a buy, or I'm going to stay here and refinance, and they'll recoup some of the money that they're losing in the other sectors of the market. So that just came out, I think that was yesterday it came out. What else is on here?
I think
commercial, there's a question about the requirements to own a commercial building. I'm not a commercial realtor. I've done some commercial, but I'm not, that's not my forte. So I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. Sorry.
So the only other question we have at this moment is do you think that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will reverse their decision?
No, I don't. But they're feeling the heat too, because they're carrying all these assets and they want to get things going, but they also have they have the perspective of they want to get things going, but they want to do the right thing. They don't want people to be thrown out on the street, and they want to find some kind of happy medium to be able to kind of dispose of assets, but not push people out on the street. I mean, there's a lot of assets that were in foreclosure before this even started that are stuck in the system, and those people are getting to stay in the properties a little bit longer. And then there's people who unfortunately are affected by COVID. And I think those are the people that they're trying to help, but everybody just collectively falls into that big basin because it's hard to divide. There's so many assets. How do you start dividing all those out, and where's the division line? So I personally think that the moratorium is going to be pushed out to the end of the year. And I don't think they're going to, the 0.5 basis points, I don't think they're going to take that away. I think they're just, trying to find different ways to move forward and keep everybody's head above water.
I have a question. If, we're all Intel employees here, and some of us are looking for investment properties, why should I consider an REO over another type of investment property? And how do you get started?
Well, sometimes I think people feel like they want to invest in REOs because they can get a below market value purchasing an REO. And a lot of times that's true. A lot of the HECM properties, the reverse mortgages, you can pick up for good prices, but you have to remember you've got no utilities on. It's strictly sold as is. So I think that when you're investing, you have to keep your mind open that, you think sometimes you can get good price on a short sale, sometimes you can get good price on an REO, but if you're not careful, you can also get stuck with a lot more renovation costs than you originally anticipated, and then you can be in the negative if you're not careful with that. So when you first start investing, I would recommend that if you buy a property that maybe doesn't need everything done in it, maybe just needs cosmetic things to kind of start a little by little to get your feet under yourself and learn the process. And whatever you estimate out, always estimate 10% cost on top of that, because there's always things that come up that you don't foresee. You might start taking walls down and realize there's, electrical issues. And when I started investing years ago, and I started investing in Florida. We bought a lot of new construction properties in phase one, And then once the property was built, the builder was usually in phase 2 or 3, and the prices had already gone up. So we would either flip it at that point because it was worth $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 more, or I would put a tenant in there for 1 year and then flip it so my capital gains were a lot less. So that's another thing to think about. If you keep your investment property for over a year, your capital gains go down significantly. I'm just trying to see. I think that's all the questions. Another thing, let's talk about buying the property when you're bidding on a property. One of the best ways, obviously, to win a bid is to have cash. One of the biggest pain points is when we get offers in on REO properties is we have agents putting cash offers in, and then they submit a hard money letter with the offer. And just to be clear, a hard money loan is not cash. It is not cash. A lot of times it's contingent upon an appraisal, and the bank does not look at hard money as cash. So if you're putting an offer in on that property with a hard money lender, you should make sure that you are representing the offer correctly, because there is nothing worse than putting a cash offer in and then the institution getting it and realizing it's not cash. And then it's just a negative way to start off a negotiation. So I just want people to be aware that, a hard money loan is not the same as cash. And a lot of agents think it is, and it's not. The other piece of advice I have is when you're going into a property, you should, if you have the ability to have if you're really serious about it, and you're going to put an offer in, and you have the ability to have an inspector go in and look at it prior to purchasing it, or you yourself take the time to really go through the property and look at the structure in the basement. Does it look like there's termites? Are there any cracks in the foundations? If the utilities are on, is the water running? Things like that. Go to the town, pull an OPRA report on it, and see if there's any open permits on the property. See what work was done that was had permits taken out for it. Because the more information that you have up front before you make your offer, the better offer you can make on a property. The worst thing is to have somebody come in with an offer of asking price, and then they go for the inspection and they want a $50,000 credit. And the banks, Fannie Mae, they'll just terminate the offer. When you're buying an REO, you're buying it as is, so you should know, you should be able to see, the roof. Don't ask for a credit for a roof. You could see the roof when you go to look at the house. If you think it needs to be repaired, you should consider that when you put your offer in. And don't use the inspections as a negotiation, because that's a negative for a lender. And what was I was going to say, if you have any thought, if you have any inclination that there's an underground oil tank at a property, you should always have a sweep. The sweeps don't cost a lot of money, and it's so worth it, because if you have a leaking tank, that can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, not hundreds of thousands, but it costs like $20,000. We've had remediation jobs up to $150,000, but that was on a commercial property. So you just want to make sure. And septic too. Septic can be very expensive to replace. Any other? I see some questions. What are OPRA? Okay, so OPRA report. I forget what it's, open permits record. I think it stands for open permit public record something. And OPRA is, if you go to the town to the building department, you can ask to pull what they call an OPRA, OPRA report, and that report, and sometimes you can submit it online. Sometimes you can go to the website for the town and you can look for a open permit application. You can send it to the town and they will send you back a list of any open permits. That way you can see, if there was an underground oil tank removed, it'll be on there and the permit will be closed. Hopefully it's closed out. But you can see the whole records of all the permits pulled on the property and the work that was completed. That's a good way to find out, like, how old is the roof? How old is the septic? If you pull the OPRA report, you can see when the work was done.
One other question that's here is, what type of properties should someone focus on if they're looking to buy a house with an FHA 203K loan? 203K.
So if you're using a 203K loan, you can pretty much buy anything. You can buy, a 203K loan is there so you can wrap in your renovations into the loan. So pretty much you can buy any kind of investment property with that. You should also know that, and I'm not advocating, I'm not pushing this on anybody, but Fannie Mae has a conventional renovation loan that requires 3% down. And there's a lot of times when the 203K loan is taking too long or they don't qualify for it or whatever. And we kind of steer the buyer. We tell the buyer's agent, look, you should look at Fannie Mae has this product. It's a conventional renovation loan. So which means, like, for you might need to have utilities on for the conventional Fannie Mae's home style. It's called a home style renovation loan. It's conventional, so you don't have to have utilities on, and it's a lot easier to close the loan than it is a 203K loan. So 203K loan's a lot more in depth, and if you are going to do a 203K loan, you should definitely find a lender who is very versed in 203K loans, because we've had buyers who have gone with a 203K loan and they've had a lender that drug it out, and there was one case where the buyer lost a $1,000 deposit because they missed their closing date 3 times because the lender kept asking for extensions. So you want to make sure if you pick a 203K loan that the lender is well versed in that.
Okay, just so everybody knows, we've got 4 minutes left in the meeting. If you have any questions to ask.
Are you going to share my information, or is there?
Yes.
I'm happy if people want to reach out to me. I am happy to answer questions, or, I have a list I send out of our properties every other week. It's a little small right now, but New Jersey, Illinois, and Florida, I'm happy to include people on that. I'm happy to give more information about Redfin or whatever,
And yes, with your permission, I will, share your email address and whatever sort of contact information you want on our internal social media site.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. The housing market expected to grow or fall beyond 2021 due to COVID. It's hard to say. I think at some point the housing market's so strong right now, it's kind of scary. I think that we're getting in a lot of bidding wars, and hopefully people aren't overpaying for homes, and we end up where we get a lot of short sales going forward, because when people move, they have to short the bank because they paid. We have properties where we've had 30 and 40 offers on them. It's kind of insane. I think it will kind of straighten itself out in 2021. Right now is an excellent time to buy because rates are so low. They're extremely low. They're like, I got a rate sheet today for a conventional loan. It was 3.1% for a 30-year conventional, and 15-year was like 2.65. Kind of crazy. It's a great time to buy. I was just looking at the notes in here.
Was that for a primary residence or for a rental property? The interest rate that you just mentioned.
You mean, is it a good time to buy for either of those?
When you say 3.1% for 30 years and 2-point-something% for 15 years, the question is, the property, was that bought as a rental or was it bought as a primary residence?
Oh, I got a rate sheet today from a lender telling me that that's what the rates are as of today. So that would probably be for a single family residence.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no other questions, I want to thank Gina for coming in and sharing her time with the REI Club at Intel, and encourage everyone here to reach out to her. I'll include her contact information on the usual guest speakers page. Gina, do you have any last words before we go?
No, thank you so much for having me. It is a really great time to buy, and investing, especially if you can buy a house and fix it up and flip it, it's great. Sometimes you don't have to do $100,000 worth of work. Sometimes you can do $15,000-$20,000 and flip it. So just be cautious about your inspections, and on your first one, don't get in over your head. Just start small and get your feet under you and feel comfortable. So thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you.